Well, this is a great opportunity, and I'm really honored to be up here with both of you. Before we get right into, always an opportunity for social media. Before we jump right into the questions.
About social media, right?
We're going to do a Facebook Live afterwards with Dan and I. Speaking of media, by the way, I was told that ties were discouraged at the Water Congress.
Well, as part of your introduction, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. So before we jump right into the questions, what we'd like to do is have each of you tell us a little bit about yourself, personal, public, and your professions. And Phil, why don't we begin with you, and then Dan, you next.
My name is Phil Weiser, and my view of the world is fundamentally shaped by having an innovative mindset, which is to say, when I see challenges, I'm thinking, how do we find solutions? And there's no place where I felt more at home with that mindset than in the water community. The issues that you are working on are crucial to our future, and I can't say enough how much the way you approach them is a model of how we do things here in Colorado, but more than that, it's a model of public policy problem solving. When I was an undergrad, I worked on this question about public policy problem solving because I'm fundamentally an optimist. And obviously, I'll try to keep the water jokes to a minimum, but I'm definitely a glasses half full person. And that's because my family story has been one of coming to this country. There was just an article in yesterday's Denver Post about my mom who survived the Holocaust and who got the opportunity to be liberated by the US Army and then to come to this nation to believe that we'd have opportunity here. And the way that our country governs itself is something that I've always held dear, and I decided late in life, much later than Dan, that the way I could help contribute was to run for office. Because I believe that the rule of law and the Attorney General's job is so important to our future, protecting our democracy, the rule of law, and solving problems the way we do here in Colorado. And it was a novel experience. I was committed to getting to know all parts of our state. And in so many parts of our state, the top issue people would talk about is how are we going to manage and protect our water? And that has become a big part of what I'm going to do as our Attorney General. We've got some people from our water team here, most notably. Where's Amy Beatty? Is Amy back here somewhere? All right, so Amy's our Deputy for Natural Resources, core partner in this area. I'm excited to work with you all. I'm sorry I can't be here for longer, but I will be here in the summer, and I'm proud to say I learned the history of this great organization started with innovative leadership from an Attorney General in 1958.
Yes, in 1958, and we might run through a 60-minute history of the Water Congress right now. Did I say 60-minute? 60-second. Yeah, it was a fascinating period in time in 1957 and 1958 where there was dissent within Colorado over federal legislation for big reclamation projects. And Governor McNichols said, hey, we got to get over this and we need to speak as one voice with the state of Colorado. And that started a discussion amongst some water attorneys and water leaders in the state and how this could work. John Bernard Jr., who was the first assistant attorney general at the time, was integral in putting this together, I would say along with his father, John Bernard Sr., who was practiced as an attorney for the River District, among other things. But John Bernard Jr. and Governor McNichols, were integral in putting this together in 1958. And so it was just key with the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office at that time.
So let me say a couple more quick things about me. I've been a longtime student of water, not close, but a very interested one. I clerked for Justice Byron White on the Supreme Court, who loved water law cases, and also had the chance to be colleagues with David Getchis, who I succeeded as dean at CU Law, who, as you all know, was deeply embedded in these issues. And I've admired how water law operated as a model for other areas, and now I get a chance to help be a part of the work of this community, so I'm excited to be here.
That's great, thank you. And as part of that history between the Water Congress and the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office, we're happy to have Dan Gibbs here, our new Director of the Department of Natural Resources. Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. But I want to say on my second day of the job, I think I've been on the job officially for 8 days now. But Phil and I got together because the relationship between the Department of Natural Resources and the Attorney General's office is so critical to the state of Colorado. So, you know, I felt that was our first of many future meetings that we'll be getting together to discuss lands, water, wildlife, you name it, minerals, and really look forward to working with you, Phil. And before I talk about myself, I want to single out Doug Kemper. Where's Doug? And let's give him a round of applause for putting this amazing conference together. It's my understanding this is the largest so far for this conference. I've been a participant in the past, and definitely I've never seen so many people here. So congratulations, Doug, and to the committee as well for helping to put together this amazing conference. But anyways, I'm Dan Gibbs. About 3 Tuesdays ago, my life changed a little bit when I was scheduled to get sworn in for my 3rd term as a county commissioner for Summit County, and literally had my little boy Tate in one arm, who's 18 months old, my daughter Grace, who's 4.5, in my other hand, and my wife. We're heading out the door when the name Jared Polis popped up on my phone. And of course, I answered it right away, and he said, Dan, you know, on behalf of the great state of Colorado, I'd like to offer you the job of Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources. And, you know, again, I'm supposed to be sworn in at 8:30, and so very exciting time, to say the least. I went on to be sworn in, not knowing exactly when my first day would be in this particular position, but I soon realized that it started right away. Because, you know, I learned that the Parks and Wildlife Director, Bob Broscheid, was moving on, and he's heading back to Arizona. A lot of oil and gas issues going on, obviously water challenges, so I felt like I had to jump into the job, you know, right away, to say the least. But yeah, I was elected 3 times as a county commissioner. Before that, I served in the legislature. I was served as Senate District 16. That included the counties of Summit, Grand, Gilpin, Clear Creek, Western Jefferson County, and Western Boulder County. And then before that, I was a state rep representing House District 56, which includes Summit, Eagle, and Lake. So in the legislature, I always served on the Ag Committee. So I've worked with many of you in the room and worked on everything from forest health issues to water policy, transportation issues, you know, a broad range of topics. And then I also cut my teeth a little bit in Washington, D.C., where I worked for Congressman Mark Udall for, I was in D.C. for about 3 years, and then I was his Western Slope Director, had an office. The greatest office location for a congressional office ever was in Minturn, Colorado, so that's where I was based. And then I got certified as a wildland firefighter in 2006, so I've been fighting fires in Colorado and throughout the West, and so really look at the nexus of you know, healthy forests equal healthy watersheds. So that's been a real priority for me over the years. But really glad to be a part of this administration. Some of you may or may not know the governor, but I've known him for about 19 years. We're the same age. When I was working for Congressman Udall, he was just elected to State Board of Education. So. And then he's been my congressman for the 2nd Congressional District. But I have to tell you, he's extremely responsive. He really wants to learn what issues are important to people on the ground. And I've just been so impressed where he'll take the concerns that we hear locally and really try to find, if there's a federal nexus, a federal fix. So if you have not had a chance to meet him, I think you'll be impressed with him really understanding and learning from people, especially in the water community, but understanding, you know, how he can be helpful to all of us. So, thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for that intro, Dan. I would say that some of the questions that we have for these gentlemen came from the survey that you probably heard about earlier this morning that Doug sent out in December, polling Water Congress members about issues that were of importance to them and they wanted the administration to address this year. So we've distilled those questions down into just from 500 comments to several questions for these gentlemen. And so we're going to dive into some of those questions. Chris?
Great, thank you. And while we gave those questions to you, we've replaced them with secret questions.
Good.
So Dan, why don't we start off? And feel free to just kind of go off on a tangent if you need to, if you feel like it. We really want this to be as much of a discussion as it is just answering questions. So Dan, tell us about your vision for DNR. What are your priorities and what are your priorities as its director?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, first of all, I'm very new to the job, so right now I'm really getting an idea of who's on staff, who's doing what, understanding the 8 different divisions. So I have everything from Division of Water Resources, CWCB, Parks and Wildlife, COGCC, Division of Mining, Reclamation, Safety, Forestry, Avalanche, and State Land Board. Wow, right? But being a former county commissioner, I know there's a lot of commissioners in the room. We're used to dealing with a lot of different departments and so forth. But I'm in the process right now of really getting to know, my staff, understanding what projects are currently being done. But since this is Water Congress, I want to focus, a bit on water. Some of you probably heard in the State of the State address by the governor a few weeks ago, he emphasized, the Colorado Water Plan. And that's so important. We are working on, momentum from the last 3 years. And I know the governor is very much committed to working on a bipartisan solution for future funding. And he's really made that a huge priority because he singled out a $30 million supplemental to the budget to really help, jumpstart and get some funding in place that's critically important to really, move the water plan, moving forward. Oil and gas issues, as you all know, the governor has been involved with that, for really years as a congressman as well. But we're going to look for ways to engage local governments on those issues. Parks and Wildlife, that's another, huge area. There are about 900 employees that are part of that. And about 80% of the revenues, come from hunting and fishing licenses. And even though we see about 80,000 new people move to the state a year, not every one of those folks are buying, hunting and fishing licenses. But we know they're heading to REI, they're grabbing their backpacks, they're hiking and so forth, they're getting outdoors. So we're going to kick off a process in the near future to really look at how we can diversify, funding for parks and wildlife. Climate change will be on the radar screen for all of our divisions moving forward. The governor has made plans to look at 100% renewable energy goals moving forward, and climate change will be a part of our decision-making process moving forward. We know that drought is real. We know we can look back at the floods from 2013 as well, looking at extreme weather conditions, and we know forest health issues are continuing to be a real challenge in Colorado. So, with forest health issues too, I really want to work on looking at, wildfires don't know the difference between federal, state, and private land. So working closely with our federal partners, working closely with local partners to almost look at boundaries, pretend federal, state, and local boundaries don't exist. How do we put the resources to protect communities, protect critical infrastructure like watersheds? So those are a few, and resilience planning is all a part of that, obviously. So
That's a tremendous list of priorities. Speaking of priorities, Phil, from your perspective, what water-related priorities do you see for the new administration and the Attorney General's office in the coming months?
So to start at a high level, and first I want to acknowledge some of the teachers I've had, Dave Robbins, Russ George, John McLeod. Really, we've got a great community here. And is John Stolp here? And has he been acknowledged yet for his service? Can we give a round of applause for John? So let me start with a couple things I've learned from John and Russ, which is it is crucial that we start from the premise that we're all in this together. We are one Colorado, and the water issues bring us together in a more powerful way than perhaps any other issue. Climate change bears directly on water. We have less natural snowpack than we did 20 and even 10 years ago. That was a form of natural storage. One of the challenges we have is how do we find smart storage solutions, because that is obviously an important component of managing water. Demand-side management and conservation will get and need to get a lot of attention to develop solutions, and as you all know, whether it's working with the water engineer or the Colorado Water Conservation Board, it's our lawyers, great people like Karen Kwan, who's here, who are helping to take these ideas and craft them into solutions. The goal, and I knew this at a high level before, but now that I'm getting closer, it's more obvious, is not to get in litigation with surrounding states and not to get in disputes between different parts of Colorado. So the true north here is we work together proactively, collaboratively, with innovation to develop solutions that work for all of Colorado, which means, and this is John Stolp's quote, Crowley County remains a poster child of how not to solve our water challenges. And it is important that as we look at these issues, we are thinking hard about the communities that could be affected, and we are working with them. We are looking for win-win solutions. For example, reuse is something that Israel has done extremely well. We're starting to move a little more in that direction with some bills last year. I don't know if Jenny Arndt is here, but she spearheaded a couple of great bills. We're partners, whether it's people like Jenny at the legislature, whether it's county commissions, at the Water Conservation Board. I want our lawyers to be solutions-oriented so that we're out ahead of these issues. We have this opportunity, and it's because of the great work of people in this room, to not necessarily be working from a hole where we're in a deep, difficult situation. Instead, we see the challenges ahead, we can face them together.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Dan, I have a question for you, and I think you've started to delve into it as you gave us your history, but how do your experiences as a county commissioner and as a former state lawmaker inform your perspective as DNR director?
You really want to know what job is best? No. Well, I want to single out, I know Kevin Kearney's here, and there's a lot of Karin Stiglmeyer, Kathy Chandler-Henry. There are many county commissioners in the room I've worked with, and I've learned a lot from many of you. Looking also, my federal experience as well is important too, because the DNR job, there's so much nexus. There's so many issues that interplay within federal, state, and local communities. And I feel like, if I were offered this job coming out of the state Senate, frankly, I wouldn't be as prepared. I wouldn't really understand the dynamics and interplay with all those, governments. My goal is that, as a head of DNR, we're providing a service, and really, being a county commissioner, we are so service-oriented where if someone sends you an email and you see them in the grocery store, and the commissioners or the mayors that have had local government experience, you know how embarrassing that is if they didn't get a call back or that you weren't being responsive. I really want to, even though we have about 1,700 employees part of the DNR, and that goes up, with seasonals in the summertime, really working with local communities, understanding how we can be a partner is so critical. We have over 40 state parks in the state of Colorado, and we need to look at how we work together with those local communities. I'm going to make it a point to make sure I get around to every county in Colorado, sit down with the county commissioners, sit down with the mayors, sit down with key players to figure out how the DNR can be supportive, how we can be a real partner in fulfilling your goals that you have at the local level as well. So, that's my commitment, and I really feel like I've learned a lot, at the federal, state, and local level. I'm actually heading right after this down to the Senate confirmation hearing for me. So if you all want to come down for that, you're all welcome. Only if you're going to testify.
Or reach out to your senator.
Only if you have something nice to say. But you know, I'm familiar with that process. I used to serve, you know, in that committee. Jerry Sonnenberg, for example, Senator, we were both elected freshmen together as state reps. So I've had a long history of working, you know, collaboratively with him and others at the Capitol. But really just understanding where the gaps are. And with my experience at the federal, state, and local level, I feel like there's been a lot of silos. And I really want to work to just take those silos away to figure out how we can provide the best services for people that are us locals in Colorado, but also for you know, we have 88 million visitors that visit the state too. So making sure we break down those silos and we provide great services for people moving forward.
Thank you, Dan. And a question for you, Phil, and I think you've already started to address this a bit, and so it's maybe building on it. What resonated with you about water that you learned in your campaign?
There are a few things. The first one is this community and how it works together. There's a great saying that Roy Romer often said, which is all truth is partial, which means you hear something from one group and then you hear from another. It's super important to listen to both. I spoke at the Outdoor Retailer show this week and I talked about climate change, and I mentioned a powerful moment when I was the dean at CU Law School. A student came in and it was a presentation that someone was giving on climate change and said, "I'm from the Navajo reservation. Coal is killing the earth, but my family's jobs depends on it." And he embodied in one person this two truths, that someone's lived experience had been one way and there was this other challenge. And we only truly can come up with solutions that listen to people and understand the issues. So whether it's farmers understanding their issues, whether it's understanding concerns of rafting guides, whether it's understanding concerns of counties, we need institutions that listen to people and bring together these different perspectives from a very different state. And what I'm so impressed is we've developed that in this room. What I am often going to be thinking about is how I take this form of collaboration to address oil and gas issues, for example, which is well behind the water world in getting this principle, all truth is partial, so that we understand that no one person is seeing everything and that we really need our institutions to take on board a multitude of perspectives to make effective decisions.
Great. I'll take the next question for Dan. Dan, what are your thoughts about how to bring a sense of stability to the water community when there are a number of issues in flux right now, politically, both within the administration and the General Assembly, Colorado River negotiations, drought, climate change, you name it?
Well, first of all, the Colorado Water Plan, well, I recognize there's a new governor, you know, I'm brand new as well, but the Colorado Plan really helps bring, in my opinion, that stability. And I have to just thank everyone in the room, because I know that so many of you played a key role in developing it. It is really so unique that this was the greatest, I would say, statewide engagement process that I would argue has ever occurred. And so many of you were a part of developing that, and just thinking that, you know, when you have the Front Range and the Valley and the Eastern Plains and the West Slope all coming together to recognize, you know, that this document is real, that's something we're going to be working towards implementation is huge, to say the least. But, you know, moving forward, you know, I think we already have the structure in place. We have strong collaboration, we have stakeholder groups, we have basin roundtable discussions that I know the governor is very supportive, IBCC as well. We want to continue that process and really, most importantly, engage with all of you as we move forward towards implementation, because we know that it's not just the state government, it's not just CWCB, it's not just us flipping a switch and saying, okay, we're going to implement it now, but we need literally every one of you in the room to play your key role to make it become a reality. And I think that helps with stability, because you've all been engaged with this, for about 3 years now, and we're going to continue in that fashion to have it to be ground up, not driven top down, and that's my commitment to you all. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Dan. Phil, let's get a little more specific. How will the Attorney General's office support the development and implementation of the demand management element of drought contingency planning?
So I got to give a shout out to our lawyers. Many states around us hire private counsel to handle water law issues and have no in-house expertise at all, which creates a perverse incentive, and we're seeing this in some litigation right now, because they say, let's keep churning because we're making more money. We have built, and this goes back to Dave Robbins, a first-class water law firm, and no offense to other water lawyers in the audience, but we have a premier set of water lawyers who work on these issues in-house, and occasionally we'll use outside counsel when we need to, but we've got the in-house expertise and ability. So some major litigation, and this came up at the Water Conservation Board, we have our lawyers and only our lawyers against private counsel from other states, and thankfully our clients have said, those other states don't have a chance. That's how we work on these and other issues. We bring incredible talent to bear, because ultimately we've got to reduce concepts to either regulatory frameworks or other forms of agreements so that we can work together in a collaborative way where everyone understands what their role is. And that lawyering is super important, and I think the quality we have in our office is a great contribution. It's frankly, to my mind, an unappreciated benefit in the legislature, because we are getting such great bang for our buck.
Great, and now I have a question for both of you. I guess I'll direct it to you first, Dan. And it's something that I think resonated with in this poll that came from Water Congress. What are your thoughts or impressions on the existence of a rural-urban divide?
Well, first of all, I think we're one Colorado. The Colorado Water Plan has really helped bring that forward, that we can have perspectives from all over the state, that we can still come together. So I'm definitely a uniter, not a divider, but we all know that it's different, depending on where you live in the state, what priorities, what people do for fun, and just, but I think, the governor has really made, rural Colorado a focus. When you look at the people he selected in key environmental positions, they've all come from rural Colorado. So me, DNR, I live in Summit County, but I grew up in Gunnison. And then you have Jill Ryan, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. She's an Eagle County Commissioner. You have Kate Greenberg. I don't know if she's here, but I believe she'll be here tomorrow, but she's the Commissioner of Agriculture from Durango. So those are three really key positions. And actually my new acting director for oil and gas is actually from Durango as well. But you have key people that are advising the governor on rural issues, and you look at other cabinet members that are from other parts of Colorado. So I think you have a balanced approach right now. I'll be a very strong voice for Department of Natural Resources, especially for rural Colorado. But I don't want to say that it doesn't exist, that there's not a divide. I mean, I used to, when I was a legislator, actually carry around, little bark beetles with me to talk about the nexus between forest health and watersheds and so forth, where my front range legislators kind of looked at me like I was absolutely crazy, but sometimes you have to bring issues that you see in your backyard as ways to bring it to the forefront of legislators that may not be aware of issues that you have in your neck of the woods.
when I thought about running, Ken Salazar said to me, you need to go all across our state and go to every single county. And I did it, in many cases with my family. And so my son's favorite part of the campaign was going to Sedgwick County, Colorado. And my daughter's favorite part was going to Dolores County, Colorado. It's fair to say I would not have gone to those two counties had I not been running for statewide office. And I'm so glad I did. I went to Crowley County twice. And I know that these wounds, for some people, feel recent. For some, they feel they're healing. And the folks in Colorado Springs are aware of the pain in Crowley County that happened because of that transaction. Jim Lockhead and folks in Denver Water are aware of a shared responsibility to be good stewards of water so that it's not, we're just going to try to take more water from the western slope. That's what it means to be in this together, and I'm committed to leading our office with that mindset. My chief deputy, her family's from Holyoke and her husband's family's from Sterling, and we're taking our whole leadership team to retreat in the San Luis Valley to ground everyone in our office that we're here to represent all the people of Colorado. And one thing that you all can do, and John Stolp's already done this, even if they're not water issues, but other issues, broadband, opioid epidemic, elder abuse that you know of, criminal justice reform in your communities, our office, we're the lawyers for the people of Colorado. We want to work on a range of issues as effectively as this group is, so we're doing it together as Colorado. I believe that's what our nation desperately needs, and we all should be terrified that this divide will get worse. And the fact that we've made progress in this room with the water plan, we can't be complacent about it.
Thank you, that's great.
Speaking of the water plan, we do a lot of talking about the water plan, and Dan, the Department of Natural Resources touches the water plan in many ways, and the water plan touches the Department of Natural Resources in many ways. What do you see for the future of the water plan and its implementation?
Everything we do moving forward that has anything to do with water will be through the lens of the water plan. It's like the blueprint moving forward. So fundamental, that's very important. As I mentioned earlier, the governor has requested $30 million line item. Contact your legislators because there'll be discussion on that, within the long bill. That's very, very important. On top of that, moving forward in terms of implementation within the CWCB water projects bill, there'll be a $20 million ask. So, $50 million this year to really help kick things off. I think that's a real positive. As we all know, it's not the $100 million that a lot of us are kind of grappling with, how you come up with. I had a dinner last night with foundations that are working with other partners on possibly exploring how we can be creative moving forward on funding sources. But, I think that's a great start. We know that SWASI will be updated as well later on this summer, so we'll have the most up-to-date data that I think is really critically important, and how we can utilize that and incorporate within the water plan is so important. We know the water plan is a living, breathing, dynamic document that will be continued to be updated, and having the most up-to-date, SWASI information will be really critical moving forward.
Thanks, and I have a question for you, Phil. Private property rights are really important to the membership of the Water Congress. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts, if you can, about the recently appealed Hill versus Warsawa River access case.
Let me start about private property and the rule of law. We, as a nation, have grown with great economic development and with great political freedom because of the rule of law and because of a constitutional framework. We need to be vigilant and committed to defending those institutions. And for me, there's nothing more important than defending and protecting the rule of law as a system for economic liberty and opportunity and political freedom. That's going to be true north for us, and we are going to be vigilant about that. That I can't say enough how important it is. If we lose that as a nation, I'm not sure we get it back. And there are other nations around the world that are envious of our institutions, And the faith in our legal system, it's going down. We need to defend our institutions, including independent judges who can make judgments about protecting private property rights. With respect to this case, it was properly thrown out of court. This case should not be decided in a federal court. We've argued to that effect successfully. We will continue arguing. I'm confident it'll get thrown out. What I want to note also, and this is the powerful indicator of the type of work happening in this room, with respect to public access for those, and I know this is a soft spot for Dan, who want to be on the rivers as rafters, 70% of the Arkansas River is currently enabled with public access with agreements, the Colorado way, working on collaborative frameworks. That's a success story, and I think that says a lot about, again, the culture here to get things done and look for mutually acceptable win-win deals.
Thank you. You have anything you'd like to add on that, Dan? No? Okay. Great.
Anyone who wants to go rafting with him, just let him know.
Or fighting
Or
fires.
hunting and fishing.
Yeah, fighting fires, hunting and fishing.
And speaking of fighting fires, Dan, I know that this is an issue that you have been particularly involved in, forest health, and something that the Water Congress talks about a lot. It's been a discussion at the legislature a lot. What are the next steps for forest health, and how do you continue to broaden that discussion to include water?
Well, first of all, I've been so impressed with this conference because there's been multiple breakout points that have hit the nexus between healthy forests and healthy watersheds. And so, you know, some of those breakout sessions have been really, really great, and some really important takeaways. I've already been working on some possible fixes. But, you know, a catastrophic mega fire is something that I think of often. I have no doubt in my mind that under Governor Polis's leadership that we will have a mega fire in Colorado. You look at the trends of the last 10 years, some of the largest acreage of wildfires have occurred within that time frame. We look at where some of those fires have occurred as well, and you see the devastation in terms of water quality and quantity, you know, right after that. You know, it used to be we would always looking at Chris, you know, the Hayman fire and the Buffalo Creek fire that, you know, they're still dealing, Denver Water still dealing with serious remediation and sediment issues as a result of that. But, you know, you look at Waldo Canyon, you look at Spring Creek, many of the other fires that are occurring. And so my goal moving forward is, you know, making sure that you all are talking about this topic, which is awesome, and so I appreciate that. But also, I kind of mentioned before, when thinking of silos, that you know, wildfires don't know the difference between federal, state, and private lands. And you look at Colorado with having such a large percentage of federal lands, well, those folks are very important partners. So I've already, you know, been on the phone with the Interior Secretary. I've already been on the phone with Jim Hubbard, you know, the acting, actually he's official now, but Undersecretary of Agriculture in charge of the U.S. Forest Service, who used to be our state forester in Colorado. Many of you may know him, but he's going to be coming out soon. So we're going to be discussing this almost like cross-boundary nexus of shared stewardship. And in my opinion, community wildfire protection plans have been so critical to really look at, you know, what values are at risk at the local level, you know, right in back of your house, more or less. But I would love to see CWPPs really have that, you know, extra level of, some people call it CWPP squared, when you add in on top of that the watershed protection component. So ideally, if I could, you know, one area I'd love to work on with the local governments here, our state, federal partners, looking at a community wildfire protection plan squared, where we tie in watershed protection, and just knowing that there are scarce resources available, how do we bring the most resources to those areas when you look at fire behavior and modeling, where we've seen the greatest risks to human life, property, and critical infrastructure, but really highlight that critical infrastructure that we all know water needs to be on that top of that list. So understanding where those reservoirs are, understanding, if you have a fire in a particular area, if it leads right into, for example, I live in Breckenridge, if it leads right into the water source, the Goose Pasture Tarn, that's where I get my water from, that'd be devastating to the water system for the folks that live in Breckenridge. But that's a goal I want to work with you all on, almost like a statewide importance of a community wildfire protection plan that we tie in watershed protections to that moving forward.
How lucky we'd have this guy as the head of DNR.
Thank you. Thank you both for your time and your comments. I know you both have very busy lives and have things you need to get onto, but as one last question for both of you, what can Water Congress do for you?
Well, first of all, this conference is so important to the DNR. And if you do work for the DNR, please raise your hand right now. We have about 50 to 60 folks here. So thank you for your service. Appreciate it. I'm still getting to know you all, but the folks that have attended this conference, it's been, I would say, a partnership, with the DNR and folks that are here, because I think it's very important you can get, information from key folks, whether it's Division of Water Resource or CWCB or Parks and Wildlife folks that are here. So I think that's very important. But it's communication. Colorado Water Congress is so important. We always have our key staff at the Monday morning legislative meetings. I hope to go there in the future as well. But you all give us the pulse of what issues that we need to be aware of. So please keep that information coming. Ideally, if there's, real challenging issues, we'd like to have you take care of all the controversial stuff and you hand me a perfect document with no controversy or anything like that. So work on that, right, on all those issues. But really sharing information, and I view you all in the room as very, very important partners moving forward. I don't even have business cards yet. My confirmation hearing is in a couple hours, but my cell phone will be on the DNR website. I've already scheduled, meetings with some of you in the room, but really look forward to sharing information. I want to learn from you and really take some of your concerns and figuring out how we can fill the holes if possible and move forward collaboratively together.
First, I'd say keep doing the work you're doing the way you're doing it. It is extraordinarily important to our state. Number two, how many folks from the AG's office are here? I know we've got Amy, Karen, a few others. All right, let's give them a round of applause for a great... Please talk to them early, let them know what's going on. We have this ability to, both in water, in areas of nexus, and then even areas outside. I mentioned the opioid epidemic earlier, criminal justice reform issues, to work collaboratively, and I'm committed to building a culture that everyone in the office is there to work for the people of Colorado, and we're going to try to help serve the people of Colorado so that as you surface issues in your communities, we may not be able to help, but we may be able to find someone who can. We are all in this together, and I want to help get that spirit that has been so powerful in water to serve more broadly as we take on other issues together.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it a lot. Could you give these gentlemen a big hand? Looking forward to working with them in the coming years.